This year's PGS headquarters in Berlin. My name is Florian and I have with me Tanja and Diego from the Progressive Governance team. The team is actually much bigger than just the three of us, and we are so grateful for all the helping hands and minds that have made this event possible. We want to take a brief moment and share our highlights and impressions of 3 PGS days packed full of policy, politics, ideas, and coming together with you. The goal of PGS 21 was to send a strong signal to the progressive community and develop concepts for progressive policymakers at all levels of government. We wanted to shift from reaction to action and find ways of how to empower progressives to deal with the consequences of the crisis. Yes, of course, sound and efficient responses to the pandemic by political leaders were crucially important and life-saving for many of us. It'll continue to be a priority for everyone in office. Yet, for progressives now comes a time to win election and fight the hard political battles on the future economy and strengthening our societies and democracies after the crisis. This is why we need an action plan, which Jeff Morgan presented in the opening session. In a nutshell, Jeff called upon the progressive movement to renew the central idea of being progressive, the view that the best years lie ahead, not behind. And progressives must do their best to recapture electoral ground lost in the aftermath of the global financial crisis. Looking at Germany after Merkel, Constanze Stelzenmüller made clear that Merkel defined a whole era of German and European politics, but she has left Germany essentially unproof for the future. This feeling of not being prepared for the future, this kind of uncertainty about the future is shared by many in our societies, and a huge challenge, but at the same time an opportunity for progressives. As we heard from Nadia Calviño last night, fear is the exact opposite of a progressive agenda. That is why we need to provide certainty, particularly in the aftermath of the pandemic. And governments in Europe have the financial means to provide people with the certainty needed. So how to shape the 2020s as a decade of progress? Let me close by emphasizing what Justin Trudeau said in the opening session with Olaf Scholz. It is important to have these conversations between everyone, not just progressives. We have to show that progressive values and policies are worth fighting for. We have to empower people and build societies that are less siloed and open for everyone. Progressives have the best policies, the best logic, but they miss out on the emotional component and are not able to connect with people. John Nichols, in a great conversation with Paul Mason, Terry Reinke and Paulina Fröhlich, advised us on how to do that better. We must be more inspiring, because hope is one of the biggest jobs we have as a progressive movement. And it's up to all of us to be inspiring and create the momentum for change. So, over to my colleague Tanja, who's been working so hard over the last few weeks and months, making sure that the international progressive community was able to come together. So Tanja, what were your highlights of the PGS?
Florian, bringing people together and building a community in times of social distancing is difficult, and Zoom fatigue is a real thing. In her conversation with Robert Habeck yesterday night, Margrethe Vestager ended the digital call with the words, "This is good, but life is better." And I agree. But I think we also all agree that the time to set the progressive agenda is now. So that's why we set out to connect and grow and build this community in a digital way. In the past 3 days of running the summit, I received text messages, many text messages from all of our teammates overseeing our sessions that went something like, "We are running late. Is it okay if we go over time? They don't want to end. They're still in the middle of the discussion." One of our sessions, the one you mentioned with Paul Mason, John Nichols, Terry Reinke, Paulina Fröhlich, even decided to overrun by 30 minutes and continue to engage with their extremely active audience. So in other sessions, we experienced remarkable situations where speakers really tried everything to join the debate, trying to brave bad internet connections in the middle of a thunderstorm or when a fire alarm went off in their building. So I think these examples just go to show that people, the progressive community, is extremely eager to engage in the debates that we've been engaging in the past 3 days. And we all agree that now is the time to act. So we're extremely grateful to be able to bring so many people together these past 3 days to share your thoughts, your ideas, to inspire, and yeah, across borders and across screens, and hopefully next year, partly hybrid, partly live back in Berlin. So thank you all for joining. Our community came together to debate how we can make the 2020s a decade of progress. Diego, what were some of the paths forward that were discussed in the last 3 days? Do you want to share some highlights, thoughts, recaps?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, it was really the past couple of days a remarkable experience in that we had over 25 partners from around Europe and North America. We had speakers really coming from all around the world. We even had one partner from New Zealand. The whole time zone issue was definitely a challenge, but you know, we got through it. We had that community there, many thanks to Tanya. And we all came from different political camps. Some of us were Greens, some of us were Social Democrats, some of us were liberals, some of us were, you know, from the left or socialist camp. Some of us maybe don't want to be defined, and you know, that's why we're here, because we're moving forward to really understand what actually politics means in the 2020s. And for me, there was a couple of highlights. One was really, you know, of course, with Biden being elected, we just had his 100th day last April 30th. Yes, I do know that date. Yeah, I mean, of course, on everyone's minds is, okay, the US is back. Biden announced that the US is back. What does that mean? What does that mean to us as progressives? You know, of course, I think a couple really important points. One is that, you know, if we're talking about international progressive communities, we have to remember that our value, it lies in democratic institutions, democratic systems, justice and equality. And we need to make sure that our systems can include and actually guarantee that actors such as Donald Trump do not enter into power. And we need to do everything we can to take up that space and ensure that we're actually there and occupying that space as progressives to not only deliver change, but also to ensure that countries or regions or institutions do not fall to the wrong hands. So that applies not just to the United States, but also to many other countries where these progressive communities were coming from. Another issue what we're talking, of course, a lot about is just post-COVID, what's happening, you know? And what was really interesting about that is there's an appetite now for strong transformational change. But we can't speak about this change if we're not having two adjectives with us, green and just. A just transformation and a green transformation. And we need to take this opportunity now to really, you know, go off this appetite and really ensure that our new systems are based around people. Jagmeet Singh from Canada said that extremely well. He said that for us in the 2020s, when we're thinking about building economies and communities, they must be people-centered, they must be worker-centered, they must not be like the past 10 years corporation-centered. And I think that really applies for a lot of things as we're building our communities. I'm just, you know, I could go on and on, but just to wrap it up, we're going to, you know, I guess Canada's on our mind right now because we had not only Jagmeet Singh, but Justin Trudeau, and in this talk with Olaf Scholz, the Vice Chancellor of Germany, he really ended with also one important comment on leadership, is that leaders in the 2020s really need to understand that the story of the 21st century, and if I may, my small little amendment would be the story of the 2020s, is going to be about inclusion and diversity. This means a lot of issues. This means not only about different races and ethnicities and having a multiracial society, this also means having differences of opinions coming in, because that is where we're strong. That is what PGS is about. It's about bringing everyone from the Greens, the liberals, the socialists, to social democrats, and anyone on the broader progressive spectrum together to fight for our democratic values no matter where we are in the world, and to think of new political coalitions to really implement that and ensure that we have diversity, inclusion, justice, as well as equality for all. So I think just if one thing is important that I learned this past 3 days is that there's hope, and more importantly though, we have to go beyond words, and that's a lot of work to do. But I think we're ready for that. So with this digital community, I'm just floating on. I'm a little bit curious. Where's it going to go next year? I mean, we have a lot of work to do. What's next?
Well, there's actually not that much to add now, apart obviously from thanking all the partners, all the 28 partners of the PGS who have been supporting us with their inputs, with their energy, to make the PGS 21 possible. We really look forward to working with them in the future again, and hope they'll be able to join us next year. And well, there will be more PGS moments throughout of the year, and we'll definitely be back with a bigger gathering next year. So in the meantime, stay safe and stay tuned, and hopefully see you again soon.